Hey guys, what's up? Back at the same park again. Um, I didn't expect to really be doing this. We do go to this park quite a lot, but I didn't expect I'd already be making another JFAQ once again this quickly. Right away, I've been messaged about another, I guess, kind of sad story. Well, not kind of sad, very sad story here in Japan. And it's another murder, and I want to stress the point that Japan is very safe. Um, one thing you will probably almost never read in the newspaper is so and so shot by so and so, or some kind of gun violence like you would have in America. So I want to reiterate the fact that Japan is still very safe, and the only reason I think I end up doing a lot of these is they often end up as very odd stories. For example, the one I'm going to do right now is 12-year-old boy stabbed by his father for not studying. And I'm sure that kind of made some eyebrows raise up and wonder, what the heck, why would you do this? That is kind of a case we don't really have in America too often, someone getting stabbed for not studying. Um, so I can understand why people would send this to me and ask me about, like, why would a father be pushed to the point of stabbing his son for not studying? And as a father myself of a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old, I can understand um, how stressful it can be to study for what he was studying for exactly, and that was entrance exams. I want to stress that fact that this wasn't just like some random studying that this kid was doing. This kid was studying for entrance exams, and it would be from elementary school, which would be, he'd be rokunensei, so like 6-year elementary school, to entering into a junior high school. And those tests are very rigorous. They are very difficult. They do take intense studying. My son himself is studying to get into certain elementary schools right now, so I do understand like how hard those can be, because my son is studying to get into some of the top elementary schools, and his math level has to be like, I mean, the math level in Japan is way above what we're expected to do in America. Pretty much the math that he's studying is like what I didn't study until I was like already in 2nd grade, and my kid's just finishing kindergarten. So um, you can imagine where this kid was with his studying, being 12 years old and going from 6th grade to 1st year junior high school. I imagine it was pretty difficult, and sometimes I think what really stresses kids out here in Japan is the fact that their studying isn't like, hey, you need to sit down and do 2 hours of studying to prepare yourself for a test. Oftentimes this is going to be like a full day of studying. Like when my son's got a big test coming up, my wife handles most of it because she really enjoys it, and I feel like she teaches it in a way where she's very calm and she knows how to make it fun, and they're very relaxed and laughing and having a good time while they study. And my son actually really enjoys studying. I don't know where he gets that from. He is the total opposite of lazy me. When I was in school, I was not good at studying. I did not like to study. He loves math, he loves science, he loves to study. I'm so proud of him for that. I'm so happy with that situation. Um, I constantly like let him know, like, I'm like seriously so proud of you that you're like so into this and can study for so long, because you are not your dad. Um, but I can see where a kid would reach a point that he'd be fed up with this. Like sometimes when my son says he's ready to study, we sit down and get ready to study, and then he turns out to be very tired. And so I say, you know what, like, I think you're probably a little bit too sleepy and you don't even realize it. You know, just like go to head to bed early, or take a nap, or relax first and get your mind in the right place, because since he's always ready to study, I can do that with him. I know it's not going to be like he's trying to get out of it, which is great. I'm again very lucky, but I do know that they have giant blocks of studying to do, and I've heard other stories of other kids who get very stressed out by this, and I can understand why. I think at times it is too much. You know, education is important, knowledge is important, becoming better and better at a certain subject or whatever you're into, or heightening your skills so that you can enter the top tier elementary or junior high schools like this kid was. I can understand. I get why the father wants that. He wants a good future for the kid, but you've totally made that a moot fact if you've stabbed and murdered the kid. Now, this father was 48 years old. Apparently, he said that him and his son argued about studying because he did not want to and his father did. And that's when he pulled out a kitchen knife and began to stab him in the chest. At first, he tried to deny that that's what the situation was. He rushed the kid to the hospital when he started, of course, bleeding out. And then at that point, he was questioned by hospital staff who said, you know, why is your son stabbed? Like, what happened? And the father originally told them it was just an accident, which I don't understand how you could have some sort of accident. Apparently, he stabbed him like multiple times. And then at which point they decided to call the police, of course the right thing to do. And when the police finally came, that's when the father told the truth and was like, oh, look, we argued about studying. And, you know, my heart breaks for this family. I don't think the father did this out of being like some sort of malicious psychopath. I think he did this out of insane frustration. Of course, he obviously did take his reaction too far. There's never a point that justifies stabbing anybody for any sort of reason, aside from like defending yourself from an attacker is all I could think of. Especially when you are a 48-year-old man attacking a 12-year-old kid, there's really would not be any kind of situation. I mean, unless that kid had some kind of gun pointed to your head or something like that. That's the only thing I can think. But at the same time, I understand his frustration, what it must have been. He must have been at a point where he had been struggling to learn this stuff with his son and struggling to get him to the point of studying enough to be ready to do this big test coming up for junior high school. And like I said, those are very difficult. Those are hard tests. So I think both people at that point were pushed to a point of stress. The son pushed to a point where he did not want to study anymore, which I've heard of kids being pushed to before. A lot of mothers complain to my own wife about that their kid is just sick of studying for these entrance exams that are coming up just for elementary school, and that's just elementary school. So you can only imagine junior high school is like double or triple what you would have. And that probably is where that kid was at. He was probably like, look, Dad, I am sick of this. I am not studying anymore. I'm ready to take this test. I don't need to study. And I'm sure the father was like, no, you're not ready. You know, you still need to learn this and this. You need to know this amount of kanji. You need to be good at math like this. And that's probably where they got into an argument, and he pulled the knife and stabbed him. Obviously, way overreacting to what he should actually do. And people ask, is it necessary, Scott, that he would need to study this hard for a test that the father would be like this concerned about him studying? And I mean, I'm not going to say that yes, he needs to study to the point that being stabbed needs to be, you know, on the table for if you do not do it. No, there's never a point like that. But if you do want to enter the top tier schools in Japan, yes, then an absorbent amount of studying, just an insane amount of studying is required, like to the point that probably you and I, raised in a Western setting, couldn't even imagine getting into this much studying at this age. Yes, this does happen. This does reach a point of like being an insanely large amount to study. I remember my wife telling me stories of when she was preparing for college. She would stay up till 3 a.m. almost every night studying to get ready for the test to enter medical school. So you can imagine, I mean, this is probably some very important, very deep, very extensive studying. At the same time, I think one of the problems that pushes a lot of parents to the edge, because you do hear stories here quite a bit about parents killing their kids. For example, this same week that this happened, there was a mother who killed her 4 kids, and the father came home to find she had stabbed all 4 kids to death. And I think they were like the ages of like 10, 4, 3, and 1. I could have those off, so, you know, just correct me if I do, that's fine. The thing I'm trying to get across is that she stabbed her own 4 kids to death and killed them, which is just insane to think about. But it's also kind of the overbearing, stressful environment that I think Japan places a lot of people in here. We work anywhere from 10 to 12 hours a day, and if you come home after working 10 to 12 hours, you're kind of like up to here with your limit of how much work you can do. And asking your kid and getting your kid and studying with your kid is more work. Let's be honest. I mean, that's not like, you know, super fun time for you, super relaxed time for you. You know, you're not like, I can't wait to get home and study with my kid. Maybe there is some situations, maybe like if I was going to study art with my kid, I'd have a really good time because I love art. But for the most part, if I was sitting down to teach my kid math, I mean, that would be laborious for me as well. And that can be really hard. I mean, you know, I work as a teacher, and as a teacher, and I work as an artist too on the side. When I come home and I have to do more of that stuff for my home time, it's stressful. You know, you're like, dude, I just spent the whole day with kids, and now I gotta take care of my two kids, and I don't have any energy left, you know? Especially when you're at 48, I mean, your energy levels are going down at that point. After you hit about 40, I think you're headed down on the energy level. I know I can definitely say, as I'm at 37 now, the amount of energy I had compared to when I was 27 is considerably lower. But that can be another factor that weighs into this, is that people are overworked. So when they get home, they're overstressed. So when they get to a study point, they're overly excited or overreact to a frustrating situation. And I'm not saying that that justifies what the father did. There's no justification for it, as I've said before. But I can see how the life that some people live in Japan, combined with the amount of studying needed in Japan, can lead into this final reaction. Anyway, that's just my 2 cents on it. As always, I'm here to answer your questions. Unrest it with the questions you requested. And this is JFAQ, Japan's frequently asked questions. Have a good one.